Hi, and welcome to the Human Side of Business podcast. I'm Ange, MacCabe, CEO and co-founder of Intuitive Performance. I'm a performance coach, HR professional, whole person leadership facilitator, and your host. The Human Side of Business podcast is fueled by the genuine curiosity to understand how personal characteristics and skills can be leveraged to drive individual and team performance, tangible outcomes, and ultimately organizational success within business. Each podcast is devoted to sharing knowledge, expanding our learning edges, and exploring the trends in corporate culture towards growing the emotional intelligence of organizations. I'm so glad you're here. Hi, and a warm welcome to the Elevate Business podcast. Both myself, Ange MacCabe, and Scott Russ are your hosts. We have the pleasure of introducing you to Sara Napier, who currently serves as President and CEO of the United Way Halifax, focused on creating social change. Sara is an active board member on several community economic and communication committees across Nova Scotia. She has been awarded the Halifax Progress Woman of Excellence Award in 2011, and most recently for Non-for-Profit of the Year from the Halifax Chamber of Commerce for 2021. We're excited to hear from her experience in leading teams through change and cultivating an environment for success. Welcome, Sara. We're so excited to have you here today.
Oh, I'm really thrilled to be with you. Thank you so much.
Our pleasure. And just as a sidebar note, congratulations on the most recent Chamber of Commerce Award for 2021 Non-for-Profit of the Year. That must have been a great experience, especially in the environment that we're in.
Thank you for mentioning that, Ange. Yeah, it meant a lot to the team. It means a lot to all of us. It's the first time that the Halifax Chamber of Commerce has given an award to a not-for-profit. So we were the inaugural recipient, and it's a tough word. And it was a real pride builder. I think the team has worked so hard always, and especially within the past couple of years. So thank you for that.
Our pleasure. So let's get into this. Tell us a little bit about your journey from a leadership perspective and your role there at United Way.
Okay, well, I've been at United Way Halifax as the president and CEO for just over 6 years now. And that's been a really amazing journey through my time with the organization. And leading up to joining United Way, I've been working in Nova Scotia for my entire career, always with a little bit of, I guess you could say, a purpose-driven focus, whether it was in municipal government, community development, working in other charities and nonprofits, or working in the education sector as well. So all of my work has revolved around marketing, communications, partnerships, fundraising, all of these types of things, and community development, of course, which has given me this great launching pad to join an organization where I get to bring all of those worlds together into one to make an impact for our community.
So tell us a little bit more about your role at United Way and what that looks like currently. I know there's been a lot of changes, I can imagine, over the past 6 years that you've helped take initiative on and build out further.
Yeah, well, United Way has been around for a long time as an organization, and it's one I was really honored and proud to join. And if we think about here in Halifax, the United Way was established in 1925, so almost 100 years. Similar stories across the country. And when you think about the purpose of a United Way, and if I look into our mission and what we do, we bring together donors, community members, volunteers to create social change. That's our focus. So you can imagine when we've been in this type of work for decades, of course, it continues to change based on societal trends, based on the evolution of social issues. So we've been on a change journey that has been nonstop, I'd say, since the origin. But I'd say in the past several years, and certainly in the tenure that I can speak of more specifically, we've been really deliberately focused on how can we have the most impact? How can we have the most cohesive team possible? How can we be centered around our values and purpose? And how do we ensure that we're adaptable at the core so that when we're thinking about the impact that we want to have in community, that we're doing everything that we can to maximize that impact by having the most innovative and constantly evolving business practices, whether that be revenue diversification so that we can be offering more to community, or whether that be how we work in an integrated way with partners so that we can be a part of more change together. So there's definitely a little bit of, I'd say, an entrepreneurial spirit in the nonprofit world. And we like to call ourselves, rather than nonprofit, we even like to use the terminology for impact as a better orientation of how we operate every day as a team with that network of people that we rely on to work in partnership with to share a vision and share our purpose.
I see a lot of threads there in the sense of what you're doing, Sara, from a leadership capacity is ensuring that internally within your team, you have cohesiveness that's aligned with the vision, mission, and your purpose for impact. And I think that's absolutely amazing. And Scott and I can speak for us, honestly, in the sense that we get super excited in having leaders in front of us to unpack this a little bit more. I mean, with this type of leadership, it takes intentional thought. So from your seat, what is your approach to ensure that you have that kind of walk the walk, talk the talk?
Yeah, you're right. It's a very deliberate journey, isn't it? And it takes a lot of thoughtfulness, and and it's not always perfect, So I think it's really important to say that out loud. That there are the stumbling blocks and the pieces that we all run into along the way of what's not working. And I think what's really important is that you listen to those kinds of moments and do something about it. But from, I guess, the way that I might start answering that question, and it is a big one, of the way that I've always tried to approach my own leadership style is I'm very open, sometimes to a fault, and really let people know what's important to me. So a lot of open communication. I provide a lot of context to our strategy and where we're going and why we're doing it. When we talk about that purpose-driven and even the vision of the organization, we have a lot of even deliberate conversations around that might be a vision. And if you don't want people asking, but I don't see how I'm connected to it. So there's a lot of deliberate conversations of, and this is how I, as individual A, am a part of making this happen. So we'd like to connect the dots in a lot of ways to that. So so for us, if I mention our purpose around our mission around advancing, social issues in our community and making that change together, whether you're working in fundraising or community impact or marketing or finance or HR, I want people to be really clear in understanding we cannot do what we're doing without excellence happening in every element of that work and that individual kind of connection point. So it's so I'd say I'm transparent, pretty open in my in communication and setting the vision. And also it's really important to me to look at employees as people first, so it's a culture that I've been trying to build on how do we honor one another as human beings, really care about each other, love each other. And that if we get that right to build the culture, then the work and the success will follow from there.
That sounds like a really challenging thing to do at the end of the day. Like, it sounds so simple, right? Like, let's just treat people as people. Let's just make a people approach first. And yet, even I think Ange, you might be able to speak more to this, but around some of the clients that we're working with, it can be a challenge at times to kind of show up in that way. And sometimes we do have to kind of check ourselves at the door or leave our egos aside. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you've been developing that within your team?
Sure. Yeah, I can give a few specifics as examples, and agree completely, Scott. I mean, it's not easy, and there are moments along the way where you have to make tough decisions, and you think about is everyone on the team aligned from a value point of view? If there's moments that aren't functioning well, how are we unpacking those? And sometimes that means that we either people might say this isn't the right fit for me, and they don't like the vibe of the organization and they leave, and kind of have some of those open conversations, or you figure out how does the organization need to evolve, that we keep that culture at the core. So there's often a lot of difficult decisions and conversations that help to shape that outcome, no question. But a few things that we do to really keep that focus of values. Number one, we talk about values and have a lot of self-reflection of our values incorporated even into our performance development program. Annually, that's a part of the conversation. And it starts with that self-reflection first. A practice that we've started even during the pandemic, which I realize we're all 2 years in, as for a lot of that time we've been working remotely. We have a weekly all staff meeting every Monday morning to kick off the week of, what do people need to know about each other this week? And it's a half an hour. And the second part of that half an hour is just social time, where we break into small groups and people just connect. And when we come together as a group, and one thing that we've also added into that weekly mix recently are asking individuals to reflect on how they keep a growth mindset compared to a fixed mindset in the workplace, and sharing stories and words of inspiration. So I realize as I'm rambling around and talking about all of these different issues and topics, it's really about doing what you can, even when it's tough, to keep the culture strong. Listening really carefully to what people are saying and what they need, and doing your best to act on that. Communicating the context always so that people have an eye on the big picture. Make sure that people know their individual contribution to the work.
So important.
And I think there's that piece of making sure that if we see each other all as one unit or one community of individuals, that we all learn from each other and are inspired from each other. And that's that example of even sharing your growth mindset kind of inspiration. How are we being really deliberate about whoever you are in the organization? You have a teaching and an inspiration role to your colleagues. And that's a big part of what I've been trying to build.
That's fantastic, Sara. And it really sounds like you're taking a realistic approach to the expectations from a leadership perspective. And what I mean by that is you're not just saying, okay, here's the expectation, go figure them out, team. You're saying, okay, here's how I can show you how to have a growth mindset by setting up, the all team or the all staff meetings and having people have their own input so that there's that openness for two-way conversation, because it's so important, especially in harder times. And hearing you and identifying in the correlation between the thought process around leadership all the way into performance and the systems that you have within your organization. So again, it's taking it from vision and putting it into the daily how. And that's also really important from a leadership perspective. I'm curious because there's so many things that we could kind of isolate and talk about when it comes to the past 6 years with United Way Halifax. Sara, I guess, what were the top 3 things that you've learned as a leader?
It's interesting. It's been my most the most powerful experience I've had as a professional and as an individual has been a part of the United Way movement. And the learnings are abundant. So even when you ask the question, top 3, I think, oh my goodness.
Start?
Or maybe the most impactful. We'll make it a wider scope there for you.
Yeah, no,
I need it too, to be honest.
Yeah, and part of it makes me think, when people ask you about your, the most learnings or the mistakes and what you've learned along the way. And one thing that my mentor has always said with this is that I have categories, of learnings or categories of mistakes. So I have like strategy mistakes or strategy learnings or people mistakes or people learnings or whatever they might be. So my head goes to that ultimate of all the categories of what I've learned. And even if I were to think about it from a people point of view, I've really learned the importance of being real. I mean, I know that, but then seeing it in action and realizing, and you can see the different kind of experiences that people have when you just tell it like it is with heart, so not like, but just really open up and be transparent. And you can see how culture responds and revolves around that from a trust point of view.
Mm-hmm.
That's been a really big critical area of work that I'll always keep with me. And maybe to tap in one from a strategy point of view, I've learned that a lot of things don't work. And I've learned that, when we're in a nonprofit sector or a for impact sector, specifically, even though you often make the comment that you need to think of it like a business, it's not quite comparable, even though there are learnings that go back and forth each way. One thing that is comparable, though, I think, is every organization has a life journey and a change journey. And I tend to that gives me comfort in realizing that when we're going through an evolution, there are going to be moments that will be crunchy and difficult. And then they will pay off at some point. And so it's a reminder for me, and I even like to give a reminder to the team, if we're having, like, whether it's lean on revenue or feeling like we're getting less traction than we want to, or something's not getting the momentum that we have, we're still getting the building blocks in place for when all of those other conditions come to be. So it's something I think that the team, every once in a while, they're like, yes, Sarah, we understand it's an evolution. Yes, Sarah. There's a little bit of maybe a friendly and loving eye roll from time to time. But I think it's important that we remember the arc, and that it is indeed a journey and an evolution for us to keep our eye on in the bigger picture.
Mm-hmm.
I love the way that you describe the arc, because it seems like it makes the crunchy times not so crunchy, recognizing that you're not always going to be here, and it actually makes you appreciate the times that you are more prosperous or doing better from that perspective, and recognizing that it's not always going to be at the top of the roller coaster, so to speak. So I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's often a grind, and I think in the past couple of years in particular, I think, and then even looping that back to maybe there's a theme there with growth mindset or keeping focused on the evolution. It's like we're on a path. Let's remember that it's not designed to be easy, but it is intended to have impact. And we have to, just as we want to take the wins, we have to take the lumps along the way. And we'll ultimately get there. It's just, and let's just make sure that we pause in each of those moments and recognize and say, it's not, we won't be defeated by a difficult moment. It's understandable that we might have a lot of emotion or a lot of challenge with that, but let's keep on going, because it's actually a part of the design journey. It's an inevitable part of the journey.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you've utilized the words growth mindset a few times, and I'm wondering if I could get a little bit curious, because selfishly, I want to understand motivation attached to growth mindset, and I'm sure others do as well from our subscribership, Sarah. When things get tough, or when it's that inevitable thing that you don't want to do, how do you harness your growth mindset to ensure that you're motivated, not just for yourself, but for your team as well?
Yeah, well, I'm sure, like the both of you, I have days when I'm better at that than others. And,
of course, we're human first.
But I think, I do a few things. I always, I always am looking at that bigger picture, and remembering, like, just trying to keep it in perspective of, okay, so this, like, even when we think about the minutia that happens with life, and if sometimes something that can feel like it can overwhelm you in its entirety, but if you keep it in perspective in the vision or in the path, you can be reminded, actually, that's like, in the scheme of things, that's like 0.001% of what my reality of experience is going to be. So let's give it the energy that I need to give it to understand it, but also be able to move on from there. I do a lot of reading. There's a lot of quotes and a lot of authors and pieces and podcasts that I listen to that help me stay focused on growth mindset. And I think a lot of it too is from a baseline, and it sounds maybe a little bit too basic in its description, but I believe in it wholeheartedly. When you're taking time to sleep well, to eat well, to exercise, to give
100%.
yourself those mental breaks, that your baseline is lower. So I feel like that keeps me in a healthier headspace, so that I can handle the bumps with more consistency and strength.
I understand you. And just coming from a place of vulnerability, I mean, since before Christmas, and Scott's been kind of living this at afar with me, I've been sick. So, a lot of people have had Omicron or COVID come through their household. It happened to us. I'm immunocompromised. So it was a little bit rougher on me than the rest of my family. And then a sinus infection, and then allergies. And so to your point, regardless of if you're in a leadership position or not, if your baseline is higher, then it's quite challenging to take on everything at once. And it can be overwhelming. So it's so important to have, using your words, Sara, basic habits around sleeping and eating and exercise, and just finding your own groove around habits. It's the small things is what I'm hearing, in the sense of how you're looking at the big picture. So it's the small things in how can I push it forward this week? And it's the small things as to how can I ensure that I'm showing up for myself and for my team this week by taking care of myself.
Yeah. No, no, thanks for sharing that, Ange. And I'm sorry to hear that too about your health, effectively. But
I'm coming around, so it's fantastic.
So good. And that is such, that's such an important example, that, and it goes back to, we're going to encounter all of those things, but what are we doing to proactively just do our best to stay on top of it, knowing that we can't control
exactly
a lot of it. But that's one thing that we've talked about with the team is, if you're not feeling like, if you need help, then say the word. Here, like, again, we've been talking a little about the pandemic, 2 years in, thinking about the human beings first, employees second. Some people managing children at home, going back to school, illnesses in the household, lots of deadlines, maybe really missing that human in-person interaction to what we would normally have for that sense of connection. We've been saying to people, like, do what you need to do. If you need it, do you need the day? Talk to us, tell us, take it. Make sure that know that we care about you, and that we want you to be healthy and well, and that's, again, to use baseline again, that's that fundamental, and we'll figure out the rest of it together, which also means, how are we pitching in to help one another in different ways, even if it's not traditionally in a traditional job description perspective.
Yeah,
people really need
it.
It seems like it's always coming back to the theme there around meeting people where they're at, wherever that might be, and providing that space for them to be able to express where they're at, and to be able to seek out that support on any given day, and then to also support their colleagues where it is a team effort from there.
Yeah, I think that's right, Scott. And I have to say, like, I feel so grateful too for the team that I happen to get the chance to work with every day. I mean, it's just like, and I laugh about this sometimes too, because I used to be, like, years ago, of course, the youngest person on the team, and kind of like, that's just because I started working really young when I was 20, 21 or 22, and got used to the nickname of, like, kiddo, and, just that kind of, that piece. It's like, now I'm the oldest one. or very, very close to. And you just think, like, the energy overall of the team, the experience from people who have been there longer, the energy and the experience of people who are bringing a fresh set of eyes. Everyone's so passionate. They care about each other. Like, we've got a really special culture, and it's taken some time to get there, like it does for any organization. And I have to tell you that I think we're all feeling really, a lot of pride, and even really protective, that how do we make sure that we keep it, because we know that that feeling of connection with your workplace and with the people that you work with, when you have that in a really healthy way, again, everything else unfolds as it should from a professional capacity perspective.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. Thank you for sharing that with us and with everyone else too. We always ask our participants, what are 3 words of inspiration, or maybe 3 thoughts of inspiration that you would want the world to hear?
Well, again, on that vein of things that I like to say, or things that like are having so many different words, I guess I have it feels like there's a Ferris wheel of words in my head all the time of different phrases and things. But I do have a couple that I'd like to share, if that's okay.
Yeah, please.
And one is actually, it's a parable that if I could briefly describe it, that would be great for me. And it comes from a podcast that I listen to called The One You Feed by Eric Zimmer. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but it's based on this parable of that speaks to. Well, can I just read it quickly?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I love to hear it.
Okay, so here we go. So you could say a grandfather or a grandmother is talking with their grandson or granddaughter. We'll call her grandmother just for the purpose of the story. So the grandmother says, in life, there are 2 wolves inside of us, which are always at battle. One is a good wolf that represents kindness and bravery and love. The other is a bad wolf, which represents things like greed or hatred or fear. And the grandson or daughter stops and thinks about this for a second, and he looks up to his grandmother and says, "Grandmother, which one wins?" And the grandmother replies, "The one you feed." So I think about this a lot. I think it links to growth mindset. It links to how to look at the world, trying to be really deliberate about making that choice of what are you giving energy to? What is that you're feeding inside of yourself? What's the content you're putting in? What are you putting out? And really trying to stay focused in that good wolf side as much as you can. So that's one thing that means a lot to me. I guess one other thing that I would say, again, there's so many, but one that's been sitting with me a lot lately was said by someone named Laura McCowan. And she uses the phrase that there is no it. And, so I think about that from a point of view of we're often searching for the it, or the end result. And it's this comment and conversation that, the process is the gift. Even when you get to an it, there's going to be another it. So just really embracing the journey that we're on and realizing that there's no such thing as maybe the perfect fulfillment. We're kind of continually striving to do our best to contribute to the world, make a difference. So keep on going and doing that, and stay focused on a continuous way of contributing and learning and being your best self in the world out there.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much, Sara, for joining us today and sharing your vision around leadership and for impact approach in the community. We appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. It was great.
And for those who would like to learn more about the United Way Halifax, we're going to provide a link to the company's profile on the Elevate Business Podcast title page. Take good care. Thanks for listening to the Human Side of Business podcast. I'm glad you could join us. If you enjoyed today's episode and want to stay updated with our latest content, make sure to visit our website. The link can be found in the episode description, where you can subscribe to the podcast, sign up for our newsletter, and learn more about our whole person leadership services. Sounds interesting? Explore the Whole Person Leadership Cohort by Intuitive Performance, a unique program that offers unparalleled support to managers on every step of their leadership journey. Our program features evidence-based assessments, workbooks, group coaching, and interactive learning experiences to help you level up your leadership skills. Reach out today to apply to one of our upcoming cohorts. Until next time, take care and stay curious.